Welcome back, everybody, to In the Loop. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of In the Loop. My name is Michael Burpo, and I'm joined by Katie from Punchmark and Cody from the Smithy Group, and we're talking about what makes a site shine. And I think that there are a couple of common answers, good branding, but it's also some deeper ones like having a good solid navigation or having good landing pages. And we try to dive in and really make you understand what does that actually mean. We give some examples of some sites that we really enjoy from the jewelry industry, as well as some sites outside of the jewelry industry. And I think it's a really good show. Please enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Punchmark, the jewelry industry's leading website provider. Join the community of nearly 500 other jewelry stores in choosing Punchmark's easy-to-run and e-commerce enabled website platform by visiting punchmark.com for your free trial demo. And this episode is brought to you by the Smithy Group, a digital growth agency that helps leaders and businesses dream bigger and achieve multi-generational integrity. Through insights and intelligence, digital marketing, and advertising solutions, they help businesses expand their business and grow their revenue. The Smithy Group has helped hundreds of businesses surpass their goals and believe that whatever your business, whatever your story, they will make it matter to your audience. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show. So welcome back, everybody, to another episode of In the Loop. I am joined again by Katie Kinlaw from Punchmark, Cody Giles from the Smithy Group, and we're going to be talking about what makes a site shine. So this is going to be anything that we really take notice of when it looks at like a good website, when we're just browsing the web, as well as what we do professionally to make a website as good as we possibly can. I'm the director of user experience, so I try my best to focus on things like the quote-unquote user experience. So that's like a technical term to talk about like how good is the site. That's mainly what it is. Katie, of course, is a digital marketing manager, so she's probably looking at how they drive traffic to the site and other things. And Cody, what are you looking at when you look at a site?
Same thing. So who are we driving to the site, but also the story that we're telling? Is it appropriate for the brand? Does it convey the message and help to solve the problems that the brand is ultimately trying to achieve to drive customers?
So let's talk about brand then. Let's start with that. You just brought it up. What are some brand touch points? Katie, what do you look at when you talk about brand?
Yeah, so obviously I am a digital marketer, so my kind of lens of a good website is going to be a little bit different than yours. But from a branding perspective, I think there's some basic things that I really look for. I think one, we're going to have to go with the actual brand logo. I think that's kind of the basis of your brand as a company, is going to be that visual look of it and kind of tying into that, what makes your brand you. So obviously your brand colors, if we're talking about a website specific typography, things of that nature. I think making sure that it's cohesive and that it's specific and tailored to you. I think there's nothing more off-putting from my perspective if I go to a website and it looks like the logo is made from like word art from Microsoft Word from like 1998. Shout out to Windows 98.
That's how I started design.
So making sure that it's clean, concise, and that it conveys who you are as a brand. Are you a luxury brand? Are you something that's a little bit more organic, free-flowing, things of that nature? Again, I'm not a designer, but me and myself, those are the specific things that I would look for.
Isn't that kind of interesting? You probably have heard this. We've heard this too. We'll talk to a potential client and they start talking to us about their brand and they really say, oh, we are a personable family-owned store. We welcome anyone that comes in. Then you go to their website and it feels like very much the opposite. Like this really is just conveying complete luxury, very high class. Like it's not mimicking that at all. So it's this interesting dichotomy of from a retail perspective and a store perspective, what you think you are to how that drives online. Like we have another retailer that we talked with last year and we were just looking at the website and we were seeing the mix of colors and talking to them and saying, where are these colors at in your store? Like how is this being conveyed in store or is it? And then we realized that it wasn't at all, that in store it was very, earthy tones and very natural colors versus the website was blue. So it was that difference of, okay, well, we need to make sure that we're conveying that same feel for both the online environment and also for in-store, because we know in your area, a lot of people are going to go online first and they're going to come into your store. So we want to make sure visually that that experience is parallel and similar there.
To hit that on the head, what we do when we start a website every time at Punchmark, we start with a thing called a creative strategy assessment or a CSA. And what that basically is a questionnaire. And what we're doing is we're asking all those questions that Cody just mentioned. So things like this. Finish this sentence. I want my site to feel, and then people always say high class. But what I always am like, but your store, no offense, is not high class. That's not a knock. It's mainly if you're in a town of, my hometown, 6,000 people, 4,000 people, you shouldn't really be hitting high class. And maybe it should be more like we're down home. We know what your, wife, husband, groom wants, and we can hit that on the head. And those are the kind of questions that we ask, like, oh, I want my products to feel accessible, or I want my products to feel luxury. And like the luxury item thing, everybody seems to want to do that in jewelry. And like, I understand it because jewelry tends to be considered a luxury. And in certain areas like New York and LA and pretty much anywhere in California and in some of these major metropolises can have that luxury feel. But sometimes there are a lot of other options. It's like you can paint with the entire rainbow, not just whatever color luxury is, red or green. Purple's luxury, Royal, in case you're curious. So let's talk about a couple other ways that besides the logo that you can drive your branding through. I think one thing every time I've heard it probably a million times. I've heard it one time. I want my logo bigger. Okay, I hear you. You want your branding to be bigger. But let's talk about some ways that you can tie your branding through that isn't just making your logo huge. You can have your logo small. Look at Nike's website, it's tiny. Or Apple's website, it's tiny. You put it up there. How can you tie your branding through the website, Cody?
I think some of that comes through, because you think about branding, it's not just your logo, it's your tone of voice, it's how you come across, even also through products. So Apple's a perfect example of, their logo's at the top corner, but as you see every product, that logo's there as well. So you're weaving that through the entire time. Mm-hmm. Maybe a bit more challenging for our retailers, right? But you can still weave that through on product pages, having your logo placed there, talking about, when we talk about, if you want to convey an experience, you have a page that's talking about your bridal experience, like you're weaving in your information there. So that's a chance for you to kind of harness that tone of your store and really kind of the vernacular that you use and how you want your customers to see you. All that to me is branding and come across that way through the text is a lot of times where you can capture that. I hate nothing more than going to a site and seeing what they're trying to convey visually. And then from a text perspective, it's not that at all. It conveys a completely different message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that too. And kind of piggybacking off of that as well, when we're talking about curating the imagery for a site too, there's nothing more off-putting for me than to go to a site. It seems to be crafted with the design's eye, but then all of the imagery is like weird stock photos. I think that it just feels kind of unnatural. And when you're really focusing on your brand, I think obviously the text, the tone, how you're kind of messaging that on the site is important, but also are you utilizing high quality photos of your store, of your staff? I think, especially for jewelry specifically, like, when a consumer wants to come in the store, they feel a little bit more comfortable when they're already kind of familiar with the faces that they're going to be interacting with, and even for like product photos too, we talk about this a lot is, are you showcasing someone physically wearing the item? Is it someone that's in your store? How are you curating that experience versus, not that there's anything wrong with using very stylized, kind of handpicked stock photos, but how do you make that balance and how do you kind of curate that around your specific brand too?
It's almost like if you decide that I need to redesign my website, I also need to have a photo shoot to make sure that aesthetically it all matches up. I just think about the time that people have invested to revamp their website, and they've pulled the same images that they had on their old website that are just pixelated.
Gotta boost those.
Right.
They gotta go. So definitely when you think about website, I feel like you have to think about imagery. That's one of the biggest things, Katie, you're right, of what that conveys.
Right.
I mean, just like it is so, right now it's COVID, so, take this with a grain of salt. But I will say that it's so easy to get a decent set of photos done for your website. Photos that will not be on other websites. I mean, I've been up and down iStock. I think I've plumbed it as best as I can. But I will also say is nothing really hits my eye quite like a website that has good in-house photography. Things like this. All you gotta do, find a good photographer that's local. There's got to be someone. Go in and take all your photos of your 50 best sellers. Have it, you could be someone in-house or you could get a model. It's up to you. And shoot all your 50 favorite pieces on that model and just do some close-ups, do something, a couple things different, and shoot it on flowers or dried flowers or your old arrangements in your store. I got that tip for Evelyn. She loved it. But it's amazing the quality and like kind of bringing that story all the way through you can do when you actually take the photos yourself.
Well, it's important too, because you mentioned going through just stock photos and pulling all of those that for a single photo shoot, if you have someone come in and take the pictures and to edit them, they're all going to be edited the same way. So they're all going to visually look similar to where if you go to a stock photo website and you start pulling 5 to 10 images, the way those images are edited from a lighting perspective are so different that there then is no consistency from a visual standpoint on your site that you're
100%.
going to completely lose, rather than getting a batch number of photos taken and having a single editor edit them all at the same time so they visually all look cohesive and bring your site together.
1,000%. So we talked about branding for a little bit. Let's talk about some other aspects of the website and some things that kind of catch my eye, at least. One of which is navigation. And this kind of ties into, your navigation as a whole, your header. Maybe I can kind of break that down, as well as some landing pages and other items to do with wayfinding. Just so we're all clear and we're all on the same page, navigation refers to the little strip of navigation items, the little strip of words that usually rest below or next to the logo at the very top of the page. It's not the entire block. That's called the header or the head, but the navigation is the items, for example, that could say fine jewelry. And then when you select that or hover it, usually it pops down or it has a direct link to things to do with fine jewelry. So it could be, a good one could say, earrings, bracelets, watches, necklaces, and blah, blah, blah. And then a very good one, you hover that necklace and now gives you, do you want diamond pendants? Do you want fashion jewelry? Do you want, necklace is hard to do off the fly. We could do like earrings. You got hoops, chandeliers, studs. You got any danglies. I don't think that's a technical term, but that's okay.
No.
You got all those terms.
Huggies, metal types.
Yeah, crawlers.
Huggies.
Yeah. See, you have all those options. A good navigation versus a bad navigation. A bad navigation just has too many navigation items or not enough and has all the jewelry uncategorized in that drop down of fine jewelry. A good or great navigation has them categorized into maybe 2 layers. So you got your fine jewelry, you got your basic sets of jewelry, which everybody knows, bracelets, earrings, blah, blah, blah. And then you have the subcategories beyond that, which allows them to really drill down and get exactly what they want if they know what that is. That's my diatribe on navigations. What you guys got anything else?
Isn't that, that's so good for when you think about mega menus and, if I hover over earrings and I see all these different options, if you're really trying to encourage someone to stay on your site and to browse more, when I do that hover over, I get a glimpse of all the different possibilities that I can see. So like, I see 3 different types of metal color. Let me click into one. Let me browse those. I know there's another one. Let me go back up and click on another one there. So that really, to me, encourages more browsing. It keeps them on your site longer. It keeps them invested, which obviously drives them down the funnel.
If you want to see a good example of that, you have SVS Fine Jewelry. That's one of our websites. I love their navigation setup. They have a ton of landing pages. Maybe you want to go poke around on there just to see what is capable.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is, again, my lens looking a little bit different from an analytical standpoint. There's actually a lot of data and reports that you can pull about how people are interacting with your navigation and where people are. It's basically heat mapping. And then you can even see they start at your home page and then they click in this piece of your navigation and they go to the next page and then back to the home page, right? So I think understanding kind of in your mind how people want to interact with your site. There's nothing more frustrating for me when I speak with a client and we always go over the same components, right? I think one is we're talking about their business priorities and they talk about how custom is so important to them. Well, why isn't custom in your navigation a major tab, right?
Tab.
So just little things like that. Talking about your business priorities, are they highlighted appropriately as well? And then nothing worse from my perspective too, when you click on a main header and it doesn't take you to any page. There's only the drop down, right?
Shoot it right
so
to
I think
them,
Exactly. So I think making sure that everything is fleshed out from the top level pages, then to like the subcategories, it's just a better user experience in general. And making sure that you're highlighting and prioritizing the bandwidth, the real estate in your navigation for the things that are most important to you too.
And set up landing pages for those things. If you have a major category, Katie touched on custom. Custom is such a big part of our business. And we really do. We have a great master jeweler. We have a great in-house jewelry and refinement system, or we do repairs. We'll have a landing page for each of those things. That way, one, better SEO, better ranking. You can have those individual pages start, ranking individually even. And two, it's like, if it's important to you, tell the story of it. Start really, I get that you do custom jewelry, but show your pieces, if you have a piece and you make it and you don't photograph that thing before it goes out your door so you can reuse it, if that's allowed, your guys are doing it wrong. I think you guys really need to start photographing your own work. Come on now.
Right.
I think that's so important because some retailers, they have the landing page too, right? It's like, hey, we do custom, we have a page for this, but the page is an image and 3 sentences and a button to start their project. I'm like, we have to tell the story and really get the consumer to buy into this. Otherwise, this page is serving no purpose right now. Like, we really have to invest in the landing pages and invest in telling the stories, like you're saying, Mike, and capture the images. It's so important to get those images.
So just think about it from your perspective. Jewelry is it's just an expensive purchase. And it's and especially don't even think about it from you as a jewelry industry person. Think about it from me, a guy like me that is just trying to do the least. I'm just trying to get through this. And think about it. That's how a lot of people are doing it. So
no, I know.
Is that person really going to actually pull the trigger and do this custom piece that he knows that his person is going to be really in love with? It's no, that's not enough storytelling to get him to open up his wallet. Think about it from the potential customer and woo them into actually making this purchase, which is a big deal to them. They want to be kind of reassured a little bit. So before we jump into the rest of the episode, maybe we can have a word from Podium about what they offer. Our clients know that it doesn't matter how great your website is if people can't find it. Podium helps you get found and chosen by making it easy to get reviews from your happiest customers, just by sending a simple review request through text. In fact, with Podium, every step of your customer journey is powered by text messaging, so you can talk to your customers on the channels they prefer. Start the conversation on your website with Podium Web Chat. Set appointments, answer questions, and close deals all in the same thread. When it's time to pay, just send a request over text so your customers can pay in seconds. And now that you've got a happy customer, send them a review invite over text too, so you can rise up the local rankings and start the cycle all over again. With all of this, plus powerful integrations and features in one consolidated inbox, Podium is your tool for customer communication. Send a text, get more done. Punchmark clients will receive 25% off when they sign up for Podium. Learn more at podium.com/punchmark. Thanks, back to the show. And we're back. So I guess we just had a call to action right there with where they want to drive you to. So let's talk about call to actions. I can rant on this for hours, but what do you guys see when it comes to proper ways to actually get people to do something, whether that's convert or book an appointment? What do you guys see?
So, call to actions are the bread and butter of a digital marketer. And I'm sure Cody will agree with me on that. When it comes to driving a user to the site, what do you want from them once they're at that point, right? Do you want them to contact you and interact with your brand? We just talked about Podium. Do you have even a live chat is a call to action? Do you have the ability for someone to interact with your brand that way? Do you want someone to go to an event that you're hosting? Do you have the appropriate page with the details about the event? Is there an RSVP? Do you have a form that's embedded that will allow people to do that? Do you have a contact us form? Call to action, right? Do you have the ability for someone to FaceTime with you potentially? I know some of our clients do that. Do you have the capability of, your phone number is a call to action, right? A form on your site is a call to action. A product inquiry is a call to action. So how are you utilizing the real estate on your site to the best of your ability, and what do you want the user to do once they're there? And I think that it's a combination of combining those components together to drive the user to where you want them to go at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I would say don't be afraid to use multiple calls to action on a page. One button on a page is not enough.
It's not enough.
You have to pack that in almost every section for a chance to convert.
Every time you tell a little story, it's like the punchline. It's like, if you get them to laugh, here it is, buy this or book this appointment. And one more thing, if you guys don't get anything from this episode, it's fine. Get this little morsel. The proper way to create call to action copy we'll just say on a button, is to answer the question, I want to, and then throw it in there in pretty much as direct and as few words as you can. So ready? I want to book now, or I want to shop now, or I want to inquire. So as few words and as direct as possible. Don't be adding extra words or I want to book this appointment. It's like, just say book an appointment or book or answer it short, sweet. Don't be getting into these extra long phrases that, can break the button because they have, 50 characters on it. Mm-hmm. Keep it short, simple, direct, so that they don't have a question in their mind what that button's going to do.
Yeah. And I think another thing too is also to make sure that you can see the call to action, right? The whole purpose of the call to action is that people interact with it and engage with it. So going back to the branding, do you have a primary brand color that kind of pops, on your site? Like maybe your navigation is that same color. Make sure that the buttons that you're utilizing are eye-catching and in that same color, or making sure that you're incorporating it, like if, for example, right? Like let's say you're running like a flash sale and you put, flash sale in your main navigation, like, would you be more, gravitated towards that if it was like the same gray color as the rest of your navigation, or if it was like bright red? You know what I mean? Like, how are you also incorporating colors and making sure that it's the appropriate size and highlighted on the page as well, to make sure when you're kind of keeping that in mind too?
Absolutely. Yes. Don't leave no pound signs on there.
Yes.
And make sure you link your buttons after you put them in.
So let's bring this thing home. Let's talk about a few of our favorite websites. I think one of the easiest and best parts about the web is you can see what works and also what doesn't just by using the web. And all I do when I look at, searching for new ideas or better ideas or way to improve, all you got to do is just look at these websites that are industry leaders, and not just jewelry websites. I think a lot of people get caught up in I want my jewelry website to look like James Allen or Blue Nile or Tiffany, all those big name people, all well and good. But I think let's talk about some out of industry folks that we like.
So I've brought to the table a few jewelry industry related websites. So can I go with those first? Can I go with those first? Well, I wanted to bring these to the table just because if a lot of our listeners are jewelry focused in the industry, I want to be able to showcase websites that are relevant to them so they can kind of get an idea of where we're going with these. So the first one is Stone and Strand. This is an online jewelry brand. What I like about this page, and if you're listening and you visit this page, the homepage has a really good mix of, or a really good balance of imagery and also white space. It feels like it's very, I use the term breathable. So everything doesn't feel condensed and running up next to each other. So when you kind of see that, when everything's together without that white space, you really don't know where you're supposed to draw your eyes to. You don't know what you're supposed to look at. So with that particular homepage and with that site, there's a good mix of white balance in the imagery. So you can your eyes logically flow down the page and you can absorb the content and start to read it as it's supposed to be kind of consumed. Again, I mentioned the homepage scrollability. There's a portion on that homepage where you get to a certain section, and rather than continuing to scroll down the page, you scroll just in that section. So you get to a point and there's an image with products. Once you get there and keep scrolling, that small list of products kind of scrolls for a bit, and then the rest of the page scrolls. So there's almost like micro scrolls within the whole scroll of the page, which is an interesting take. That's maybe hard to explain. The other one that I have is BabbleBar. So what I liked about this is another e-commerce site focused on jewelry. When you're looking at the product listings or the grid for all the products. Within the mix of that, they're maybe showcasing 5 or 6 products, but then rather showing another product, they take like a somewhat of a break and they show an actual a promotional box. So, I see a list of products. Now I see a promotional box that's talking about rings that are on discount. I thought this was pretty interesting because if you think about when you show promos, you're either doing it on your homepage or you have a running bar at the top of the page. But as a user starts to scroll down, they're no longer seeing that promo or what you're offering until they get to the product page and maybe see the discount there. So this was an interesting way to kind of hide promos while someone's scrolling through products. If that's where they're spending the majority of their time is browsing your products, you're embedding your promotions directly within that in a really nice way. So that one was another interesting one. That was Babble Bar.
Very cool. I was going to say another one that's kind of similar to Stone and Strand, I feel like, is Majuri. I feel like has kind of a very similar vibe. I know that maybe that can be a little, I don't know. I feel like people either really love Majuri or they don't, but it has the same kind of vibe where it has a lot of really nice and fresh imagery that kind of balances that white space too. So I think that's another great example to look at from a jewelry perspective.
I think Majuri too, for a navigation standpoint as well.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job.
They have really good menu options.
Yeah. I really like, my favorite is Nike, Nike.com. I think that it is so successful because it's like it's its own feel. Everything about what they do, it's got a great, it feels like Nike because they're the best storytellers in the game. Everybody who wears Nike, you can get a knockoff version that pretty much is the same thing, but you want it to feel like Nike. And I think that they do that with their photography and they do that with their navigation. And they also, in case you didn't know, Nike actually owns a whole bunch of different brands like Jordan, Converse, a couple different brands. And those brands all feel like Nike, but they all have their own sub brand to them. And, I actually would think that some of our listeners probably have multiple stores. And I actually don't hate the idea of there being a different branding, slightly different offshoot of the branding for a couple of their different stores if they're out of the same city. So if you've got one in one city and then like an hour away, you've got another store. I don't hate the idea of like one having an accent tone being blue and the other one being kind of in the same palette but slightly different being green. I think it's not the worst idea in the world.
Nice.
One more, maybe I'll wrap this up. I really like Wayfair.com. They do, in case you guys don't know, they do kind of a little bit more expensive furniture, and they sort of are kind of like a IKEA, except more expensive. I don't know. And I think that they do a great job using landing pages where every single time you go to a landing page or you click a product, you're actually not confronted with any products until like the end. Because a lot of times it's like, all right, you're looking at pictures of couches. It's like picture, 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 picture. It's better to be like, do you want a sectional? Do you want a limited couch? Like, do you want a love seat? And then they present it to you. You get your options and you're done. And I think it's just such a smart, sophisticated way to have a website, especially selling something like that.
If you want to talk about menus and navigations, Wayfair is the
king,
the one that has all of the king for it.
Yeah.
Guys, anything else before we wrap this bad boy up?
I don't think so. I think we hit on all of the main components. I guess one other thing, I know that we talked a little bit about photography, but as we're talking about the transition of your branding and the curation of your website too, obviously having those foundational branding pieces, your logo, typography, the colors, and then transition into the actual images that you're using on the site, but also how are you actually showcasing your products themselves? Because I feel like how those are showcased also kind of tie into your branding. You mentioned earlier how sometimes we'll have clients that will say, oh, I want to be shown as a luxury brand. And then sometimes we'll look at the photo quality of some of their products and maybe it's, photographed in like dimmer light. Maybe it's not the best quality photo. So that's going to be a direct reflection on your brand. Also the inventory that you have on your site too. Not only
Gotta keep it up to date.
Yeah, so up-to-date inventory, your product photos, I think those are also important when we're talking about your brand as a whole, because your inventory, how that's showcased is going to be a direct reflection on your brand as well.
I think it's important too, Katie. You mentioned when you're thinking about branding, it really impacts the website. And maybe for some people, the first time you think about branding is whenever you are building your website or you're revisiting it.
Absolutely.
But that extends on beyond your website. So if any brand really should have a set of brand guidelines that does have your typography, your colors, all that information. That all can be used for social as well. So as you are creating graphics, if we're using tools, we talked about tools in a previous episode, you pull all of that in. And as you're creating your social graphics, you're using those same colors, those same fonts to make sure you have that consistent feel across all platforms. So it's for your website, definitely, but also can be extended beyond that.
Your brand, it just should be, it's like the personality of your company. That personality should come through, in every type of activity that your store undergoes, whether that means you're sponsoring something, whether that means you're on social, you have your website, which we, consider home base, you're running an ad. The brand should come through and kind of be the style to everything you do. And it can be anything from like how you phrase things. Are you really personable? Are you really direct? Are you quirky? Like you kind of have to decide all that stuff. And that's kind of the next step of branding and how you can really kind of refine your website. And it all starts with your website, I think. Guys, I think that's where we'll call it. I really appreciate you guys coming on, Katie and Cody for joining me, and for Podium for making this all possible and sponsoring this episode, as well as Punchmark and the Smithy Group for putting this on. Again, my name is Michael Burpo. I really appreciate you guys listening to this episode of In the Loop, and we'll be back next week, Thursday, with another episode. And I think that's with Ben and Ross. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.